Hi, Jill. Really lovely to see you today. And thank you so much for, taking this time to have a conversation with me about your, coaching experience.
Of course. No, it's my pleasure. Happy to be having this conversation with you.
Please go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself. And then what brought you a year ago? We have been working together for a little over a year. What initially kind of brought you to even begin to explore coaching?
Sure. I'm a wife. I'm a mother of two 12-year-old highly energetic boys. I'm a business owner. I'm a pediatrician, and I'm an executive. And so I have a really full life. And my GTD journey and this desire to have coaching started even years before this coaching started. I discovered GTD during my residency, which was probably one of the early days, 2001, 2002. And I was a person who loved lists, loved organizing, loved optimizing systems. How can I be the most efficient way, to do things? And being a resident, you really just had what's in your pockets. You're running here and there. And I had a Palm Pilot back then, and I loved it because I could put things in there. I'd remember it. People thought I was a rock star because I was getting so much done, and I loved it. And then I started kind of hearing about the coaching. I don't know when it first started, but it was always in the back of my mind. That'd be great to do. And I really started considering it. I look back in my notes, it was 2016. I got married, the twins were about 4 or 5 years old, and we were going to move, and I was overwhelmed. And I called up the coaching, and I got you, Meg, and we talked for a while, and we were, almost ready to book your ticket to come out. And then life just happened. It got overwhelming. We put it on hold. And then a year ago or so, I was facing kind of some changes in my career. It was COVID. I was switching from clinical work to more executive administrative work. And it was just overwhelming my systems. And I thought, I got to get better. I gotta do this. And so I dug through my files. I think I found some emails from you or one of the crew at GTD, and I somehow tracked you down. And I'm just so happy that we reconnected, and that I could do this coaching. It's been great.
But what has always struck me the whole time we've been working together is the weekly review.
Yes.
You elaborate on that, because that has been one of the most fascinating pieces, to watch your journey in year one with the weekly review and now year two.
Yes. And it, I'd used GTD for so long, but I never considered myself a master user or fully having implemented. And the big piece was, I think, the weekly review and how I was using it. And so I knew that after this many years, I needed some help. Like, I've read the book many times. I've, like you said, started, stopped, restarted. And so I needed a different approach, and coaching just was the answer. And what you helped me see is that, to frame it in with my life, through the lens of my life. And this is how I needed to approach the review. And that, yeah, I do have a full life. This is, what I've chosen and want to do. And so have those kind of expectations going into the weekly review. And that made a big difference to just really get that perspective, and to not be fighting against it and trying to make it fit into what I thought it was supposed to be like. So that took outside perspective that I hadn't seen for 2 decades. So that was huge.
And tell me a little bit how it's been for you to keep trying to find that space in your calendar. Talk a little bit more about how do you create that space? That concept of the threefold nature of work is so critical. I remember, for example, you had a weekend where something showed up with the boys with Scout. right? And you weren't able to get space that week, right? And you weren't able to do your weekly review. You weren't able to stay on top of it. You had some really unplanned stuff show up at work. And then what was that week like for you when you weren't able to create that space?
Yeah, you had such a good analogy. It was the sailing analogy that so we're both like to sail, and
Colors.
if you don't, you know, if you have a really rough seas and you don't take time to put away those sails, like you got to take time to do it. And it helped click, and it did take a few times. I mean, I would think I'd get it, but then you really have to live through it again, and you start to realize, no, this is non-negotiable. I think David maybe used the words like, it's like brushing your teeth or things like that. It wasn't quite there yet, but it was, it started to, it really solidified how important that was. And when I didn't do it, what it meant. And then that's where I fell off the rails in the past. Life would happen, and I knew this was life. I knew these things would pop up, but every time they did, I couldn't recover. And it took acknowledging how much time it takes to recover, put away the sails, get things cleaned up, and to take that time and to help me then keep going on and not lose control or not get that overwhelm is the feeling I would get. So that was key.
The other thing that I saw was it was okay to reprioritize, because you have those competing priorities, so that you made a very conscious choice that you were going to do what you needed to do that weekend for the boys, right? But it's been so interesting that I think people if they still think GTD is about so many rules instead of best practices. And I think you're a really wonderful example of best practices. And that when you tap into those best practices, you really feel like your boat is under control. You know where your boat's going, the boat's under control, and you just feel like so much better in that way.
Yeah. And it's always been a scary thing for me, losing control. I think so many of us that gravitate towards GTD, we want to try to get that control. And I was tired of always, getting things organized, feeling good, and then wham, something would come up, and then, and I didn't like that feeling. And so having you help me say that's okay, because I was thinking, oh, I've got to prepare for this so that when these things happen, I'm not so rattled. But for you to say, no, this is going to happen. And so to have a plan going into that, part of the plan is having things or doing that weekly review, keeping things updated, so when it happens, you can go into that triage mode and then get back get back on course. But that's okay. That's still part of the journey, is these triage moments. And I had some big ones during our coaching sessions. And when I first did the coaching, I thought, gosh, this is, I wish I had done it 10 years ago when I first met you. But really, it makes sense that it's in my life now, because I'm doing such a career change and I'm switching into this new position. And wow, this is great. This is what I was, why I was meant to do this coaching. And then one of my sons was diagnosed with a non-cancerous brain tumor. And that was a big, wow, life moment. And I thought, nope, this is why I needed to do GTD, because this prepared me for this and many other things in life. But I was able to navigate that storm. Not that I had the perfect house through this and laundry was always done, but I was able to go into that with a calmness and being really present for my son and my whole family, and being able to just devote everything to that, my resources, to figuring out a plan. And that was priceless. That going through that moment, having prepared like I had with you, was priceless. Yeah.
Can you speak not so much about the mechanic part of it, but can you just elaborate on the other parts that you've gotten from
Sure.
learning the methodology?
I don't think I've shared with you. When I first met my husband, I took him sailing on the ocean and one of our first trips. And we were coming in and he leaned too far forward and sure enough, flipped over.
Oh,
Like
you
I saw
did.
his life flash before my eyes. And I was like, I have to stay calm. We survived, obviously, but it that analogy reminded me, sometimes in a storm, you got to point right at the wind, relax your sails, focus on what you're doing, and to maintain that calm when the storm, comes. So I I'm probably getting off track from your question, but it's made me not afraid of these life moments, when they come up, that losing control. I'm not afraid because I know what to do, and I can just, set things, aside, do what I have to do to get through it. So that's what I wanted to say about that. I think you asked about the tools or the things that I use to with my
Well, I was
I
saying that a lot of people think that that's all it's about.
oh, right,
What's
right.
cool and setting up your projects and actions. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation with you is for people to see those other pieces of the
Mhm, mhm,
methodology. And I think you stated it so beautifully about I'm not so scared about when something in life or work or professionally happens that I can ride that. Like we've gone through three of them
mhm,
last
mhm.
year. We had the
Yeah,
two personal and one for work.
yep, yep.
And I was so honored to be able to support you through that and saying you're going to get on the other side of it. And there's a way to be, David does this whole thing about, how do you surf the wave and not just get plummeted by it.
Mhm,
And you adjusted your sails and you kept adjusting your sails and you kept adjusting your sails. And you were also anticipating. You were then able to look and say, this is coming, and take that time and to adjust all of it. And then when we were able to go up the horizons, which was challenging, your cognitive preference is the
yeah.
here and the now and what's in front of me and what's today and what's the next action. And once we were able to get control over that, then there was this whole going up the horizons, right? So
Mhm.
we were able to just keep going up. And sometimes that was uncomfortable to go up the horizons because it's taking you outside of your cognitive preference, but you navigate that as well. And I remember you text me one day where you were talking about doing a weekly review, and on your own you went up. You went up and did an area focus review and responsibility, and you started to bring in all the different horizons. And I think that when people have an opportunity to really work with us for a while, it really starts sticking about all of these strategies that you can implement and integrate into your life, and anything that kind of comes your way. And I just think that you are just a wonderful example for people to see and witness.
And you really helped me see and to lean into the times when I was feeling resistance or trouble, getting back on track, to really look at why. And maybe as a physician or just personality, I need to know, why is this so hard?
Yeah.
I know I've lived through enough things that I know you don't just have to work harder. Like there's something that is with the system or with the way you're approaching it. And so you helped me see, and that, the Kairos study was huge. The fact that I, think very sequentially, and that it's harder for me to leave that and to call it out. So when I recognize it, I know, that's why I'm having trouble. And in the past, I would have just walked away and done laundry. Now I was like, okay, maybe I need to take a break, fold a few socks, but okay, come back. This is the mindset I need to get into, which helped me, just push me to that next level. And those were the key pieces that I was missing on my own, that I couldn't see. That was so valuable to have you there. And I think I referred you, kind of like a training coach too, is to be accountable to someone. When I texted you, I knew I needed to have a friend in this, okay, I'm doing this. And so that if I had trouble, or just someone knew I was working through this, and that was very helpful.
It can be daunting when life comes at you. And then I remember a lot of times I was like, I just got my ins to zero. How is there so much there again? Wait a minute, like it still should be empty. Like, how did it pile back up? And I think that's the whole thing. I think when we get to partner about
Mhm.
supporting you, because I think as coaches, we've been doing this for so long now, I don't find it daunting anymore. It's just going to take some time. But I'm not daunted by the volume or what that's going to be, just because I've been practicing for so long, and to support our clients to be able to just keep practicing and practicing and practicing. So anything else that you'd like to share or just kind of leave us with? Because I think that we were able to really cover a lot. And thank you so much for all of your sharing.
No, it's a pleasure to be here, and I'm just so grateful for you, and this past year to have you by my side to navigate all of these things, and just to see where the future can go, and just so many possibilities. When I thought I had sort of tapped out how efficient I could be, or this was life, this is, I'm just too busy, I can't have more. But you really helped me look at what's important and how you fit that in there. It's not creating more hours in the day. Um it's really going up and down those levels, being able to adjust as life comes at you. But you can still have those bigger goals, that big picture. And that gave me so much hope and joy, really, throughout this, that I didn't think was possible, that I thought, this I've just maxed out. And really, it's not that I'm doing more, that you've helped me figure out how to squeeze more in my day. And it's not, necessarily the reprioritizing. It's how you approach life, and how you keep those things in focus, and renegotiate. um it's yeah, it's just, I'm just very grateful for being able to have worked with you and continue to work with you.
Same here. And lastly, I just want to ask, what have other people noticed personally and professionally since you've been doing this?
Well, definitely, it's true. Once you get good, or once you get busy, you better get ready to get better. I've had more opportunities thrown at me. People have said how I've grown professionally, and grateful that I've stepped up to the things I have. So that's, professionally, I'm happy that I'm able to do that. But probably even more so with my family, I've been able to really tune into, especially the boys, really, make some things happen that wouldn't have happened, that have just given us more calm and more joy and just more presentness. And even my husband and I, we were able to, throughout all this, through these difficult personal things, we were able to actually look ahead at a dream of owning a beach place, and making it into a retirement. Like, we were able to kind of just look ahead, and have that, which we never would have been able to do. It would have been kind of as it happens, or used down the road. But to be able to sort of sit back, and knowing we're looking ahead, but yet still being present, it's just such a good feeling. So I think, I don't know if my family really knows how they got there, or how I made that happen. but I just know that they're happier or more calm and enjoying things more. And I just kind of sit back and smile like, yep. So
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all of your sharing today.
thank you, Meg.